Open Stax Psychology Chapter 5 continued, Section 5.6, Gestalt Principles of Perception. In the early part of the 20th century, Max Wertheimer published a paper demonstrating that individuals perceived motion in rapidly flickering static images, an insight that came to him as he used a child's toy. Stethoscope. Wertheimer and his assistants Wolfgang Kohler and Kurt Kafka, who later became his partners, believed that perception involved more than simply combining sensory stimuli. This belief led to a new movement within the field of psychology known as Gestalt psychology. The word Gestalt literally means from or pattern, but its use reflects the idea that the whole is different from the sum of its parts. In other words, the brain creates a perception that is more than simply the sum of available sensory inputs, and it does so in predictable ways. Gestalt psychologists translated these predictable ways into principles by which we organize sensory information. As a result, Gestalt psychology has been extremely influential in the area of sensation and perception. One Gestalt principle is the figure-ground relationship. According to the principle, we tend to segment our visual world into figure and ground. Figure is the object or person that is the focus of the visual field, while the ground is the background. As figure 5.23 shows, our perception may vary tremendously depending on what is perceived as figure and what is perceived as ground. Presumably, our ability to interrupt sensory information depends on what we label as figure and what we label as ground. In any particular case, although this assumption has been called into question. Another Gestalt principle for organizing sensory stimuli into meaningful perception is proximity. This principle asserts that things that are close to one another tend to be grouped together. How we read something provides another illustration of the proximity of concept. For example, we read the sentence like this, not like this or that. We group the letters of a given word together because there are no spaces between the letters, and we perceive words because there are spaces between each word. Here are some examples. Can you make sense of this sentence? What? They lost me with the second sentence because it says, what do those words mean? Oh, what do these words mean? We might also use the principle of similarity to group things in our visual fields. According to this principle, things that are alike tend to be grouped together. For example, when watching a football game, we tend to group individuals based on the colors of their uniforms. When watching an offensive drive, we can get a sense of the two teams simply by grouping along this dimension. Two additional Gestalt principles are the law of continuity, or good continuation, and closure. The law of continuity suggests that we are more likely to perceive continuous, smooth flowing lines rather than jagged, broken lines. The principle of closure states that we organize our perception into complete objects rather than as a series of parts. According to Gestalt theorist, pattern perception, or our ability to discriminate among different figures and shapes, occurs by following the principles described above. You probably feel fairly certain that your perception accurately matches the real world, but this is not always the case. Our perceptions are based on perceptual hypotheses, educated guesses that we make while interpreting sensory information. These hypotheses are informed by a number of factors, including our personalities, experiences, and expectations. We use these hypotheses to generate our perceptual set. For instance, research has demonstrated that those who are given verbal priming produce a based interpretation of complex, ambiguous figures.